Thank you very much for joining me. Polina, just chatting to you a little bit about the annual solar eclipse that is happening on the 10th of June. I'm doing this kind of early. It is now the 2nd, so let's talk about this time. So to me, this reinforces the previous videos where I've been kind of preparing everyone instinctively, intuitively, by walking you through things very kindly and slowly, setting up a certain type of space and a very, very slow paced and careful, mindful reality, because this is where things are going to end, and there is a better way. There is a better way. All of this is just about nature, ourselves, everything wanting to do things in a better, bigger way, and wanting to have a more proportionate, appropriate picture in our lives. So this is not really just about having things just so. It is not about an ending or a big cleanup. It's actually not at all about this. It's actually about a build-up of information, actually, and a build-up of potential that has caused a certain outweighing. So that's when you kind of see, wow, I've spent all this time, all this money, all this energy, all this potential in a certain way, but hey, I didn't see there was a better door. Or I didn't understand that there was a much happier actually outcome. It's just that to get rid of the previous, I have to somehow realize what I've got. So this is the thing. We can't just give it all away. We can't just storm out. We cannot, we shouldn't actually do anything abrupt during these days. But what we can do is just carefully, and yes, easy does it, understand where this instinct is coming from or where this emotion is coming from. That's just from building an unconscious reality, which is much greater than the one you have. So this is understanding that you can do better, you can earn better, you can make better, you can be better off in the end, and also seeing how you have become so far. So this is also about seeing how well you've done in the past. Are you free? Do you really have what it takes to be in a certain business relationship or security level? Have you got what you really wanted from a certain enterprise, from a certain relationship, from a certain building process? And the questions keep on coming. So this is also to try to Saturn right now. And this means that we are going to have to become very, very deliberate and very careful and very also powerful in the way that we astute ourselves, that we make ourselves believe in the greater, more powerful relationship that we can have here, or in the greater, more powerful wave. But the design sometimes is huge. So this is where our previous ideas can get in the way, or we're not yet eloquent enough, or we don't have enough to make it happen. So some people have a certain type of thought, a pull or an idea, but it is so like way, way, way out there, or way behind, or way not together. So the way that is best to stick it all together is basically to be humble and curious about the normal, natural things you have going on. It's about the little, small, humble things, and sometimes it is about small time connections and just people that you have around. Sometimes people can help you believe in what you've really got. Sometimes people can help you understand where you need to go next. And sometimes it's not really about that either. It's just more about being in a way small, or being in a way petite, and how you deal with things. We have Mercury next to the Sun. Mercury accentualizes and loves, to be the first, loves to be in front, but at the same time, it's a very, very small planet, and it's a small time thing. Mercury sort of tends to also shorten things sometimes, make them small, make them a little bit more simple, and also sometimes a little unwise. So the thing here basically is not to look for that big golden center, the big golden mean, the big grand design, the big overall pushy picture. Sometimes the next stage of our development is right in front of us. I believe that some of us have cleaned up our lives and have ordered our lives well enough to be able to just see the simple truth. And that very, very small, petite truth, or that little number, or that tiny person, Sometimes Mercury makes things small, can make a very, very nice ending or a beginning for you. So sometimes behind a very small person is a big door, or behind a very small group of people, just a friendly few, even strangers sometimes yet to be friends, is a very, very large, maybe sum of money, or a very large institution, or a very, very good quality reality. But the thing is, sometimes we don't really want to see that. We sometimes want to have things just so. There is an epicness in the air. Sometimes we want things very fast. Mercury can give us that racing heartbeat, that racy perspective on life and on us. So yes, also because we have Mars and Venus in front, and they're relatively close to this conjunction. So like, it feels to me that there is going to be at least some of us that are with a very, very big grand design, or a very, very idealized notion of what is to come, or where they are in life. Also very dramatic conversations, dramatic people, dramatic ideas can occur. And I also have to say that with this retrograde Mercury and this black sun, in a way, we have a very, very, very strange, or strangers energy here. So it's very easy to be out of time. It's very easy to be a little bit too emotional about things that are not worth it to be emotional about. It's very easy to be confrontational. It's very easy to lose your mind. So the thing basically here I would also like to outline is that we have to be in a way small, and try to measure ourselves and not get aggressive, and try not to fly off the handle, as they say. So this is one of those things where we can feel so much, and we can imagine so much, or we feel that so much is immense about our lives or about ourselves. And that's how come people sometimes find very strange things to do, very strange thoughts and feelings cloud their vision or their mission ahead, or maybe their mission itself is a very racy or strange one. And the reason why, we have like a north node, okay, conjunction to sun. So this is about mission and where you're going in life, and how you're going to eventually make things work in your lifetime. Sometimes what happens is people are a little bit too superior, too emotional, or too like even vulgar or dramatic about certain things. And what we can do now is just see how far we've come. We have to see the relevance also of it all. So for example, if you've put your money, time and energy into something or somebody, how did it eventually evolve? Don't wait for anything. Don't go chasing waterfalls. Just see the simple things. Also, there's a very, very easy way now to keep things clean and light. So this is a very, very nice, beautiful moon eclipse or not, to evolve things and to help them kind of levitate off the ground with just simple means. For example, to get yourself eating right, maybe it's just about motivation, it's about watching some videos. Information goes a long way. Sometimes it is meeting one or two seemingly random people in your way that actually know something very, very interesting about a certain topic that is sort of flying around your aura. Sometimes we have a certain inability, so we are enabled to do something through a very, very simple, tiny thing. So for example, you didn't think it was possible, you didn't think it would come true, but a very, very tiny, small, or even seemingly irrelevant thing can help you. Somebody else sometimes has the key or has the power to help you. We have Chiron, 11th house to the sun. Somebody also in the group with the stellium might have just the right thing to say. Maybe there are lots of people that know things around you about certain things that you need. Maybe there is certain type of information that is now going to be very steady and worthy for all of us. So that's a very, very nice, bright, colorful, and kind of fluffy side to this time. But the main thing that I'm kind of feeling that could be the sad part of this time, because eclipse, a full solar eclipse, solar eclipse to any degree, in any way, usually has a slightly tormenting energy to it, or has a slightly stunning energy, especially if we are here somehow pushing on with this north node in the same sign. This is a very, very scary, strange time, especially if you did the things you thought would work and now they don't, or you hear somebody say something bad or sad or scary, and sometimes people can become hysterical, or they can become very intense about things that are actually not that meaningful. They don't actually bring as much as they think. So the thing here is basically to be as big and obvious about those big and obvious things as possible. So sometimes the best way to survive things, if you do have a big change coming, many of us definitely would, and if you didn't see it coming especially, and if you didn't really feel it would come yet, or you didn't kind of understand how, wow, like why would it be now that this happens? You know, sometimes it's almost like you've planned this like maybe for 5 or 6 years ahead, but here it is now. That's a very, very strange feeling when time catches up to you and rushes you on. So like when you thought it would never happen, or when you thought it would be at least another 5 or 6 years in a situation or a company or a story, and then all of a sudden there is a big gush of wind and we get picked up and placed into completely new circumstances. It's kind of like, you know, those... that story, I forgot what it is, you know, like the Witch of the West, you know, the tornado, Dorothy, you know, Dorothy swept up into a completely different mind game with herself. So this is like how it feels to me at the moment. It's really a lot like these types of stories. And the main thing basically is to see how you can just put together those brightest colors and all those innocent things that do actually work in your life, because there's always going to be a degree of innocence and flamboyance to any Gemini event. There's always going to be an eagerness to please and an eagerness to strive forward and be a little bit braver than one can be sometimes. So there is like a very, very nice optimist hiding behind the clouds here maybe. So sometimes it's really good to just get those bold colors through. So for example, if you're feeling very brave, if you already know your territory, if you're feeling very great about somebody in your family, if you're feeling very good about you, if you have enough friends, if you've met that person, you know, sometimes it's just that one person that makes it. And then there's also like this really, really nice fluff that comes with just knowing that you have somehow trumped or like knighted yourself. You know, you have somehow like made it, you know, so now I know how Bitcoin works, you know, for example, for someone, or like now I can see why my family was falling apart before, and now I have not a scare in sight. So this is when we can become very, very good to ourselves and our world by knowing where faith has led us, and also what has worked out in the end. It's like, in the end, I know what's right. In the end, I got rid of that disease, or in the end, I knew what to do in a certain situation, or in the end, I realized how to create or regulate certain experiences in my life. If you have recently, in the last few months, like 5 or 6 months, managed to really get somewhere, make sure that you have that trust. So sometimes this is a very feminine thing, and sometimes a cultural thing. In different countries, you know, we're not really ever good enough for ourselves. So like me, for example, as an Eastern European woman, I know what that feels like. You know, it's never really fully good enough, you know, what we do. And sometimes we have to be brave, and we have to be colorful and beautiful, and really bombard ourselves with gratitude for leaving a certain world behind, for doing a certain thing better, for doing a certain thing for us finally. It's like I finally made the time to master something, or I finally figured out how to play guitar properly, for example, or like I finally found out how to give myself those best things, or I finally understand who my true friends are. Everything very bright, everything very positive and optimistic has to somehow become open and believe. You know, try to center yourself in the belief system that has to do with how things are and how like they naturally work out, and how the universe or the way of life, the organic lifetime that you have, is naturally sculpting you better, is naturally working with you better. And it's good to not be afraid after all, even though there might be some big calls. And big calls could be like, for example, a death of a loved one. You know, I've just had somebody close to me lose two of their family members in 1 week, you know, for example. Wow, you know, it's incredible. Sometimes it could be a broken vehicle in the middle of the road somewhere. Sometimes it could be a weird message or miscommunication. Maybe some kind of argument or some kind of corruption in a certain type of information. Maybe it could be something to do with unpaid debt returning. Sometimes also with this Jupiter in Pisces on the second degree. Sometimes it could be about living in a world that you don't want to live in and finally understanding that you can't live in it anymore. Maybe sometimes it's about disillusionment. Stars like this could very easily lead on to having to leave, or having to leave a whole part of your world behind for somebody else. Sometimes it's about like counting your lucky stars. These types of days, they could be about, okay, well, at least I've got some savings. Well, at least I can still go home and face my fears of like living at home with my family, age 30. Maybe sometimes it is about living on your own and not actually having anybody else to turn to. Sometimes these types of stars are about the nervous system becoming completely corrupt, so not being able to handle a certain pressure, not being able to also handle certain pleasure. Sometimes people are like, I have no idea how far this has taken me, or like I'm losing grip on my own reality. And always it is good to know you. So in these types of energies, because we're only in the third sign from the first, so this is only the third sign from Aries, we're not that far into the year, starting with the end of March. We have a very, very certain knowledge now accumulating of who we are and why do we get certain things in life. Why do we have certain income, certain people, certain parties, certain events, certain homes, certain experiences, certain interiors and exteriors, because of how we ourselves understand who we are. So if we don't really know where we are, who we are, what we've achieved, where our life has taken us and how we've shown up in spirit, or how we've shown up in person, if we don't understand what our lifetimes have been building of ourselves, it is very easy to mark things up. So what I mean is, for example, mark things up is mark things up means it's like you didn't know it, but some part of you got involved in a common hysteria. It's very easy to become part of somebody else's hysterical world vision as well. And you forgot how to do things, and you got flustered and accidentally whatever was in your life got burnt down. Sometimes it happens in my kitchen, for example. I get flustered and I forget to turn off the oven and things like that. So that happens, on different levels of life. Sometimes it's like not really knowing who we are at the end of the day, not really understanding how that all like comes together, like what we're doing anything for. Like this is one of the weirdest times to see, what did I do all of this for? Why did I spend all this money? Why did I spend all this time? Why did I even try to like do this? Why did I even do this? That's a very, very hard thing to do. That's a very hard thing to go through when you understand and you realize a lot of where you have been fighting to be is now no longer open or available. Also, there could be a closure of businesses, companies, and other types of places. There could be a closing off of certain timelines and certain worlds, because they simply are not for you. And the best we can do now is basically be at peace and be polite with ourselves, because sometimes there's nothing that we can really do now anymore. Like, for example, making a certain product that now for some reason is not FDA approved. It's very hard to sell now, or being part of a certain type of method or machine that is now running out of steam. So if you are in any one of these stories, which is to do with the times, also to do with nature closing down, like sometimes it organically closes down a whole sector of life, or things are just no longer flowing somewhere, or some things are just not gonna be on a very grand level. Sometimes nature might do that. We have to be kind of all right as that which we are, and with that which we have. So whatever we have, how you feel in your own skin, how you feel in your own shoes. Also, it's about maybe going somewhere. For some people, it's a very, very good actual time for immigration. It's already been a while for that. Immigration, changing spaces, changing countries. In a way, yeah, running away, you can say that. Also, walking out of certain situations and actually facing the light. This is about maybe a completely different story. And that is okay, that is good. If you really want to do things right now and you just can't wait and you have a lot of heat, like say you have a lot of heat in your stomach, you have a lot of nervousness, don't do nothing. So the thing is not to do anything with that type of ego involved in the story. If you can't handle something, you just want to pick up that phone and call that person. If you want to just like slap someone for saying something, if you want to really get in the face of something, if you want to run away, pick a bag, and no matter how, no matter why, you just need to like leave the situation. Or if you really want to destroy a part of something you've created or a part of something that you're in, I think that would be very dangerous right now. So any fire, so if you have like a heaving to you, ooh, wow, you know, like a heaving, and you have a very, very grand idea or design, or you feel like you are at the brink of something incredible or elaborate, that's usually a telltale sign that you're about to fall, or there's going to be something dominant over you in the end. So even though you might walk through that diamond encrusted doorway, it might be a trap after all. So very, very careful with money and time, very careful with any particular needs, especially if they feel like they're not home. The next sign is Cancer, the sign of the home, okay? If you're feeling like it's about running away, ripping it all apart, it's about being on stage in front of all these people, or you feel like it's very, very like unhumble, like your pursuit is very, very eclectic, or it's very intense, or it has all these colors. Sometimes with these types of realities, if you're walking into something very, very, very uncomfortable, you know, potentially it's like wearing a corset or like ginormous stilettos, you know, there is like a sign of discomfort. And I feel this is also the sign of the times. We don't really want to mature and get real with what we have or who we have inside. Sometimes we really want to rip the world to shreds and become this super colorful being. But for some people, there is actually a need of a bit of color and change in your world. We have a Aquarian Saturn here at an aspect to the stellium and Gemini at a trine. So the thing is basically not to be afraid if there is something cooking up inside you and you do feel like you have undernourished yourself. So this is like depending on your situation. So for example, if you've been so humble, you've been keeping things small, you've been taking care of everything and everyone, and you've been really, really kind of stuck on one thing, sometimes these types of energies are about dilution and about throwing away the previous blueprint and making you open, like busting you open to make yourself more curious and more interested and much more colorful and better for your things. So if you've been very good with your progress and my previous advice didn't really ring interesting to you because you've always been putting things together just so, or you've always been in a kind of like a world of patterns, that is magnificent. That's awesome. So some of us, you know, we will be saved by this eclipse. Like life will just come in and say, hey, I want you to have fun. Okay, I want you to stop trying so hard. I want you to be free. I want you to be healthy. I want you to be zany. I want you to be more interesting to yourself. I want you to be more fun. I want you to have more light in your life. And that sometimes is how it is if you have a part of your ego, because North Node of the Moon, the nodes are usually about some part of that unconscious ego structure, has been pushing really, really far towards structured pragmaticism. But then there's the other extreme. If you have always been an extremist, an expressive person, if you're very, very expressive, very, very impressionable, very, very emotional, and very, very, very incredibly unique, and you cannot ever sit quiet. So if you have a very, very opposite extroverted sort of slightly messy personality, this is when things can get very tough. So we rely on a certain order of things here. We rely on a certain type of peace and pace in order to make things happen and to make things hopeful for us in the future right now. It's not really about throwing everything in a fire, you know, unless of course the fire just comes in and eats everything up, because that sometimes happens. So for a person who is naturally emotional and extreme in their views or extreme in how they feel about themselves or their life, and very, very intense about where they're going, it's a very good time to slow down and seek some peace, because all of that emotional momentum might be actually a trigger, and it can become like a blow up thing. So like what I feel is sometimes Gemini creates hot air, and it's like hot air creates gazes, and like things can blow up sometimes. With a lot of Gemini in the chart, I see people are more accident prone. So that's also something to speak about, maybe just a little bit accidents, and not having, for example, enough money in the bank to pay for something, your card bounces, not having enough self-esteem to really pull it all together, not having enough energy, not having enough essence, but also like arguments blowing up, especially if things have been under the surface. And I've talked about this a little bit. Now, Mars here is at an aspect to Pluto, so that increases its longevity. So what I mean is the experiences, that fire, that emotion, that intention has a much, much harder sort of crisis maybe following it, or a much harder, more stern and efficient edge. But like the thing is, the energy of Mars is not the same as before, simply because of this Pluto position, and also Venus very close behind. There is a very, very intense certainty. We really need to iron things out now also, okay? So it's not just about willy-nilly kind of like fluffing around. We have to get things exact to a degree, so we don't feel sadness about this time when we mature. This is a very important thing to talk about. Some parts of us might remember these days and remember what we've done, what we were part of, or how it all ended, or how it all happened when we mature. So for example, domestic arguments can be very dangerous during this time. Anything to do with money, anything to do with investing or uninvesting, anything that we push around here is not just a fluffy thing. So although Gemini gives us that fluff and that brightness, there is going to be an associative level in depth to this particular time that we might take forward with us in our future. So that's why we have to be kind of very careful. And though, yes, things can't happen by themselves in any eclipse time, we have to also kind of strategize. I'm not telling you to really get like hard-nosed on the strategy or anything like that, because sometimes people get really, really absorbed and they don't actually live a life. They just mathematically tune it up, which is very good also, but like we have to also be careful with that, because it might stay. There's a staining element, so stains, okay, like staining element to this particular picture. Also, because of this larger, softer quality of Mars, we have things coming up to the surface, but they're not like as maybe sharp as Gemini would usually like it. So there's like a little bit of a muffle, but things are going to come through and fruit. So there's not really that crazy serrated, like dominant edge to this time, but there is. So this is like where like you're not going to maybe get the results or the insights straight away, or you're not going to create as big or as bold as you are happy to, but like the result is still going to come through. And with us all, there is a certainty. So all of this, maybe even if there's aspects of your life flying around and you're working on different parts of your life simultaneously, there's different parts of you that are activated. There is going to be this one platform. So for example, by the 27th of this month, as we eventually go into the full moon in Capricorn as well, by the 27th, 28th, now like will become obvious. So it's like, that's when I first realized I was in love, for example, and then makes a really nice slab of time. And this is not just like, oh, for 2 or 3 weeks I was in love and there it was. This is like a slab of time. This is a slab of life. And this might be something you remember on your deathbed. So some of these results or some of these intricate materials that we're going through might inevitably make it into our future lives, or they could have a big cause and effect based upon this time. So when we are 60, 70, 90, 100 years old, it could be one of those things that we sometimes dream about. So it's important to sort of take space, how could I say better, and be measured and more appropriate, and try to also remain young and free. at the same time as not being afraid if some things get shaken up in your life. So this is kind of like one of those very intense, lifetime changing things, you know, sometimes. Or for example, during this time, you could have realized how to really make a lot of money. That's just an example. And that's a slab. And then when you're 60, you could be still benefiting from this account that you create now, for example. This is also something that can happen, but it's not important to go towards these slabs. The slabs are there. All of us have a certain unifying slab, or like a gem or a diamond, because Gemini, diamonds, gems, you know, the story that we tell to another person, you know, Gemini, friendship, you know, sharing our stories, like speech, you know, what we talk about later when we're 70, you know, how we lived our lives. There are going to be ways that they're going to change, and some of these slabs might move, but they are already practical, big, solid things that we can already say about ourselves and our lifetimes based on this particular time. So like, for example, okay, back in June 2021, I realized that I was gay, and I started a completely different lifetime from them. Okay, that's one. Or it could be something like June 2021, I took all my money from Bitcoin and I started buying a lot of land. And then I built a community there, and this was that slab. That's a slab. Back in 2021, June 2021, I realized that I got to go, and all I could think about, dream about, was going to Asia, even though I've never been there. And I just naturally started sort of telling myself that story. I naturally started thinking about how to pack my bag, like all the vaccinations I would never ever need over there, all the things I'd never ever need. That's when I realized I needed to go there. And maybe 20 years later, after traveling all around Asia, that could be a big part of your lifetime. Another slab, okay. When I was falling apart and my husband was walking away from me, I realized that I really loved who I was, and that I would only tell a certain story. So I actually decided in June 2021 I wouldn't sacrifice any more time for him or for these people, and I started meditating. And from meditation I found a great sense of peace. And even though my world felt like it was falling apart, as it probably has been for the last 5 or 6 years, I just knew that there was something really big about this time in my life. So this is when you have a slab. So like, say, becoming a fantastic yoga and meditation teacher, like 4 years later, what did it take? It took a divorce, okay? Sometimes it's like that, you know, and for some people it is an unfathomable dream, but this is where you know the dream is true. How do you know the dream is true? I'll tell you how. It makes itself out of small pieces at the moment because of the sky. It makes itself out of small things. If you think about how gems are made in the earth, you know, like all the different molecules, all the different materials, minerals, matter that takes to make, you know, all the pressure, all the heat, all the cold, whatever it takes. So what I feel is the gem is already there, and it has been kind of circulating, it has been becoming for a while. It is just that it is maybe a little bit small, and we don't really see it unless life blows it up for us. And sometimes it's like, oh, you thought that was a little point of a gem, and all that earth disappears and you have this giant crystal underneath. It's like, you're ready now, do it now. You thought this would be 10 years later? Now is the time, now is the time. Some of us, it's like that. And then for some people, it's kind of like not really sure, but they just know that like there is a part of them that looks out for certain things, you know, and a certain part is closed, you know. So there's an example, like I have not been interested in anything that this particular part of the country has to offer. I don't think about it, I don't feel it, I just don't go. So like parts of me have started to stop wandering. So supporting local cafes, supporting local artists, going to local places, making friends here. Something inside me just said, stop, I know. And where I have now set up is totally different. So like how I've been collecting my world through little things. Sometimes you don't know what your soul really wants. Okay, you just kind of realize it because of just a simple little thing that you collect. So for example, just like it's on my table, Like, I collected this little item. Like, I thought that was fantastic. Look at this, it's incredible. It's like a little shaker with a crystal, actually. It's quite crazy. This is like something that I think that we have to feel. It's all made out of small things. You know, sometimes when we don't really have anything to do and we go to a garden, this is what children do a lot. They start collecting little twigs, little petals. They look at the different, you know, animals in the ground. Like, they look at the little tiny things. They notice little smells, little feelings, little tickles of life, right? So that's when you kind of have an unconscious slab. It's just like it's tickling through the surface, an unconscious slab of you that is ready to be born. So yes, it's sometimes about what you watch, you know, what you are naturally curious about, what makes you feel good, where your little feelings are. So the little feelings, the little glee, you know, the little smile in a mind, or, you know, the little tickles, you know, the little pleasures, they can sometimes be part of that greater, more giant and more economical, natural slab of life than all these big things, you know. So like this age is done, you know, the Tony Robbins disease. I want, I will, I have, yeah, I must, you know, like, wow, me at the top of the mountain screaming for dear life. You know, like, notice the guy's voice. He's lost his voice a long time ago, but he's still talking. It's okay. So the Tony Robbins self-demise, what I mean is, you don't just live a life. You can't just live a life. You got to tear yourself to pieces to get to the next bottom line. Now, this is where a lot of that stuff has to end, because that's a disease, because it's not sustainable. It's not emotionally, energetically, or karmically sustainable for anybody to be part of that type of pressure. Okay, so when a person has a lot of might and they want to just experience their own might, they're not very easy to be around. Sometimes they're not very simple people, and they don't make other people feel simple. Sometimes they make other people worthless, and that's why they've got a big following sometimes, because we're still working with that as a humanity. And then we have to basically understand all these big build things, you know, all these big visions. Some of the time, it's just not going anywhere. You know, like a lot of also big athletes and stars, you know, especially people that have bodybuilt for a long time or created incredible results in their life that are completely out of the norm. You know, just look how their body handles it later. There's like a lot of athletes out there that have pushed themselves too hard and too fast. There's a lot of people that have gained a lot of muscle and eventually just turned to fat. So that's the thing, it's like we've got to kind of bring ourselves to a really nice medium, like a really nice middle, so that we can just simply scale up that hill that we're going on. So this north node isn't going to drive us crazy. So we can just simply walk up that next level of life or intention without birthing ourselves with so much pain and desire. And also the other thing is, if we naturally have a lot of blood, like a lot of boiling of blood and like steam and intention and maybe also jealousy or emotional nervousness, it's like, if I'm not there, I'm nowhere. If that man is not my man, he's not going to be anybody's, you know. If I'm not there, I don't, like, if we have that intensity, like, it's this or nothing. It's like, I am, I will. If we have a lot of this anger, it's actually a form of aggression. If we have a lot of this, okay, we don't really have a lot of that. So like, we don't really have that nice safe space to claim. The next sign is Cancer. So I always like to prepare people before they walk into the next sign. So if I do a yearly report as well, the month before the big month, I try to prepare the person and kind of like tidy things up for them so they don't have a big like wow like feeling. So they have a nice smooth ride. So we have Cancer next. Cancer is about the home and the intimacy that it takes to really make things a future. What makes a person last in a job, in a marriage, okay? What makes a good parent? What makes a really great mind? What helps you become over time remembered, okay? What makes a memory? What makes you memorable? Okay, what makes you a good practitioner? What makes you a nice person? What makes you significant? Okay, ox. We are in the year of the ox, significance, okay? What makes you later on maybe tired and old, but remembered or remembering those parts of your life? What helps you retain parts of yourself when you're older and feel good about what you've done in your life? Okay, care, love, okay, tranquility, and emotion. This emulsiveness of Cancer can already start to bring itself up now. So as we are in Gemini, although it's all over the place and it's really excitable, it's really nice to put things into a nice, fluffy, but significant light, and try to kind of like memorize things or remember things or put a certain sequence into a more relevant energy, and also understand what you are remembered by always, what people remember you for, like how you've done before, like these are just some, sketches here. Thought you find them interesting to look at while I talk. They're not all mine, but these are like little pieces, little memories. I used to work as an illustrator, and that's something that I also like still remember, and after all these years I still remember. So like sometimes like we make an emotion, right? We make a certain type of loyalty to something. We repeat a pattern, like learning guitar, like taking care of your hands, taking care of your skin, like you need memory. So like for example, what helps your skin cells remember a pattern and not corrupt as much, memories, emotion, understanding, kindness, sensuality also, love, and the gift of life translated into a narrative to a degree. We have to maybe eventually sit there and feel. So this is a very good time now, especially if you don't really know how to put it together. If you have a lot of things going on, try to see what gives you pleasure and what is not confusing for you. Okay, so for example, it could be holding a paintbrush and just making hieroglyphs on a piece of paper. It could be a game of chess. I have some chess here, chess pieces. Love. Maybe it is making a cake. Maybe it is about certain aromas in your home. So already start to pick out your favorites, because one of the qualities of Gemini is understanding of the favorite, or the classical, or the good, or the perfect, or like the brilliant. Get these brilliant things around. Get those brilliant people at your house, but don't over fluctuate. Don't overdo it, because it can also destabilize your next level. So that's the thing. Anyway, after all, we are here to experience love, comfort, pleasure, and adventure and possibility. So this is also like why we're here. Cancer is a global home. It's not just our house and our families. It's the global sense of what is open, what is karmically free for us to experience as a human. And then that's that. So anyway, I hope that you have a wonderful time. Try not to get emotional or intense about the wrong things. Understand who you are in a situation, conversation. Just say no to politics, no to aggression, no to aggressive discussion, no to being number one for no reason. So make sure that you are relevantly building up your next game. Thank you very much. Enjoy. And I'll see you next time. Also, everything is in the caption section below. And join up to my Patreon if you like. Bye.